Good evening. Welcome to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. Well, we've all come across obstacles at some point in our lives, maybe a financial setback, a plan that's gone awry, or a person that you thought you could depend on who, it turned out, didn't show up for you when you needed them the most. Some people see obstacles as a puzzle they need to solve, or maybe an opportunity for further growth, while others may see obstacles as a sign that perhaps it wasn't meant to be and they need to throw in the towel. The reality is that achieving most goals requires overcoming obstacles. And if you found a path that has no obstacles, it probably doesn't lead anywhere. So how do you turn obstacles into opportunities? It's all about your mental mindset. And tonight's guests are going to teach you exactly how you can overcome the obstacles that are holding your goals hostage. We couldn't have found a better panel of guests than to talk about this topic to you tonight. First, I am so pleased to welcome our guest, Coach Marcel Bellefeuille. Marcel has spent the past 23 years as a college and professional football coach. He's taken his leadership experience on the field to the boardroom as a keynote speaker and a co-author of the international bestseller, 10 Discussions for Effective Leadership. Marcel shares his life lessons with the public and private sector, which includes teaching leadership at the School of Business at Algonquin College. Welcome to the show, Marcel.
Well, thanks for having me, Barbara.
It's a pleasure. And you're actually giving away a couple copies of your book and your workbook to our lucky viewers tonight. Tell us a little bit about that.
I am. So I've co-authored the international bestseller, 10 Discussions for Effective Leadership. And it's not a how-to, it's a discussion. So there's something for everybody. Within these 10 chapters, unleashes and unkeys multiple leadership issues. And there's an accompanying workbook. So when you read each chapter, you can go and do a self-analysis and you can look at where your gaps are and what you want to improve as leadership and create your own leadership action plan. So I'm going to give 2 of these packages out tonight to 2 of our callers who call in. And we're excited that we can do that.
Thank you so much, Marcel. So if you want a shot at winning these books and workbooks, all you have to do is go to our Facebook page, like the show, and leave a comment underneath. And if you happen to be the lucky winner after we do a draw at the end of the week, all you have to do is come to our studios to pick up your books at 475 Richmond Road. Next, I'm incredibly excited to introduce our next guest, Ray Zahab. In his world, a leisurely jog is 30 kilometers, a marathon might be 200 kilometers in extreme conditions, and a test of endurance might be running through the entire Sahara Desert. Ray has been recognized as one of Canada's top explorers. He has run 14,000 kilometers across the world's deserts. He's broken world records for unsupported expeditions in some of the coldest places on the planet. And he's world famous with appearances on CNN, The Jay Leno Show, and in a documentary that's narrated by Matt Damon, among many, many others. He's also won numerous awards for his work in communities both at home and abroad. Ray Zahab is also the founder of Impossible to Possible, which inspires and educates youth to take part in adventure expeditions at no cost. Now, the most inspiring thing about Ray Zahab's story is that he used to be a pack-a-day smoker, a heavy drinker, and as a child was always picked last on teams. It wasn't until much later in his life that he made the conscious decision to turn things around. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Thank you for having me.
It's so wonderful to have you here. Now, you've sent us a video with some stunning footage of some of the expeditions that you've been on, and it goes a little bit into your personal story. So let's pull up that video now to have a look at some of the adventures that Ray Zahab has been on.
When I was unhappy in my life, I was so unhappy. I don't even think I realized at the time how unhappy I was because I didn't have happiness to compare it to. I remember the first days of trying to be happy because I wanted to be happy. My younger brother was my inspiration, is my inspiration. And he was a happy guy. He got happiness from the things he was doing, all these outdoor sports. That's how I became an athlete. He had things that I wanted. And most of all, happiness, passion, and sense of purpose. And so I thought, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do what he does. I got nothing to lose but to try. When we pursue something that we're passionate about, the way you feel, you can't replicate that.
A little bit frosty.
Non-stop, no sleep. The rewards, the great things that we will achieve in our lives are relative to us as individuals as well. We may think that we're average and we can never do this or we can never do that, but truth be told, if we're willing to take a chance and start taking risks in our lives, we can do anything.
Just totally pumped up and stoked.
I have made it a life's goal with these expeditions that I do to connect them and really immerse people and share my experience with them so they can see themselves, maybe not in the same spot, but seeing themselves the potential of doing something extraordinary in their own lives. So the link in the communication with students is critical to me. It's the meaning behind it, doing these projects.
We have one trip on this planet, one chance to do something amazing in our lives.
All of us are capable of the extraordinary if we're willing to go after something.
Some stunning footage. Now, you grew up on a horse farm in Carp, Ontario.
Yeah, I grew up in West Carleton. Great childhood. I mean, amazing. You know, spend our time outside, you know, and you're in that clean air, you're in that oxygen, you can't help but fall in love with the outdoors. But I went through a period of my life where I became unhappy, and many of us do. I mean, you know, I say this all the time. I speak at events all around the world, and I say, you know what is difficult for one person and is a struggle for one person may not be for someone else. It's a very relative and individual thing to feel that way. So by no means was I experiencing something that was so devastating in comparison to perhaps what others have felt. But to me at the time, I went through what I felt was a very unhappy and directionless patch as I got older in my life. And I just was a non-completer of anything that I would attempt to do. And so, as you had mentioned before, I picked up smoking, a bunch of other unhealthy habits. One thing leads to another. I'm sedentary, I'm drinking too much, smoking way too much. And couldn't find that simple mode of being happy or purposeful in my life, and just was tired of that and no longer willing to accept that that would be the status quo for whatever was left in my life. And so I knew something had to change.
And I want to hear more about the things that motivated you to take that first step. But first, Marcel, I want to hear more about you and your story. You grew up in the Ottawa area?
Yes, I did. I grew up in the housing project in Hetherington, and when I was born, my mom was 15, my dad was 17. My mother and father had 4 kids by the time I was 20.
Wow.
And, you know, we grew up, and great parents raised us well, your typical blue-collar family in the housing project where, you know, I unfortunately got to see some things that you wouldn't want to see as a kid, you know, have friends overdose and die, and you know, experience, you know, some hardship and some challenges.
You saw a shooting when you were 12 years old.
I did, yes I did, yeah. We had a neighbor, you know, there was shooting, and some of those things are still hard to talk about. But in the end, it was a great childhood. My parents never constrained us in our thoughts or our beings what we could be. And it's ironic, and you know, we'll probably talk about it later today, but when you're a child, you see all possibilities. The world hasn't taught you yet that you don't belong. The world hasn't taught you yet that you can't achieve greatness or you can't achieve your goals. And as a young kid, I can still remember being 12 years old, living in that housing project, and being able to think, oh, I may be the prime minister one day. Oh, I may be a professional football coach one day. And there were no constraints on you at that time. And it's just interesting how over a period of time, as you get more educated and you become more aware of your surroundings, that those things can change for people. But growing up there, we were on the fun streets there and had a great time.
So probably a lot of that has to do with comparing yourself to others as you get older. What are some of the self-limiting beliefs that you held early on? When did they start to formulate, and how did you overcome them?
So one of the things you do is, you know, our parents were great, and they sent us to a high school in Alta Vista and to a different neighborhood, and you know, we got to go to Hawthorne Public School. So you'd go to school in more affluent neighborhoods in the city, and middle to upper class neighborhoods, and you would, you know, go to dinner and go to people's houses, and you'd realize that, you know, some people were engineers, some parents, and other parents had their own law firms, and you started to realize, oh, okay, it's a much more competitive world than I thought, and you started hearing about people talking about their university degrees and how many years they've been in school, and you start to think about and sort of realize, even though you realize a future, you start realizing that future has a lot of obstacles, as per our show today, and a lot of challenges ahead of you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Ray, when did you start experiencing negative self-talk? You've spoken earlier about not having been very athletic as a child.
Yeah, you know, I probably precipitated from there. You know, I can remember being very much the guy who could not throw a football, you know, being a guy who had tremendous anxiety when it came to phys ed or physical education or gym class. I hated it. And so I think, you know, it may have been there. It may have been sort of started there. But I own it. I mean, you know, I I had every opportunity afforded to me. It's just that you, for one reason or another, you get off onto a path that you end up on. And I've learned that negative self-doubt and negative thoughts and a negative sort of gray lining look at life is like a warm blanket. It's easy to slip into. It's a lot easier being negative than it is being positive. Being positive and being happy takes work. And when I changed my life, which I know you'll ask me about later, I had to work at that. That was hugely difficult. But I think that I became very comfortable starting at a younger age, unbeknownst to anyone else, because everyone else, I'm the life of the party, right? I'm going hanging out with my buddies, drinking with my buddies. I'm the happiest guy in the world. But inside, I was a very unhappy person. And when you ask yourself, you stand in front of the mirror, am I happy? And you can't really answer that question honestly.
Why
right?
were you unhappy?
For a multitude of reasons. Massive self-doubt for sure, in being able to ever accomplish anything. I was not an academic. Maybe I could have been. You know what I mean? I could have been, but I was not applying myself or even trying. So I just didn't have that feeling of confidence, and it sort of pervaded every part of my life. So I think that you get off on this foot of negativity. You wake up one morning and it's cloudy outside on a hot summer day, and instead of saying, well, hey, at least the sun's not beaming down on my head, it won't be as hot today, you're like, oh, maybe it's gonna rain. Everything sort of has, and it just sort of becomes part of your fiber,
Marcel, how do you stay positive?
Well, you have to train your mind. Your mind is a muscle, and that's one of the things we talk about all the time is training your mind and getting in the right mindset. So there are two mindsets we talk about in pro sport, and there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And you have to recognize when you're in that mindset. So the fixed mindset, your internal messaging is going like this. It's going, I can't do that. You're getting feedback from somebody, and they don't like me. They don't understand me. No, that's not right. They hate me. I'm not coachable. And then you have to kind of twist that and turn that and be into a growth mindset. And in a growth mindset, you're always looking at the possibilities. Okay, well, how can I get better? Where's the kernel of truth in that criticism? Whether it's coming from a family member, a coach, in the business world, some kind of leader. And when you get into the growth mindset, it changes everything. It's like smiling. It just changes your whole demeanor. It just gets you thinking a different way. So being able to recognize that. I want to hear more
about that, about the parallels between the football field and the boardroom. And of course, I want to hear all the stories about your expeditions. So when we come back from the break, we've got lots more. Don't go away. Hi, welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. Next time you or maybe your child might be tempted to give up under difficult circumstances, consider the following. Oprah Winfrey was severely abused as a child and ran away from home at the age of 13. Helen Keller became deaf and blind at the age of 18 months. Winston Churchill had dyslexia. Walt Disney suffered from attention deficit disorder, and it is believed that Vincent van Gogh had bipolar disorder. And before J.K. Rowling created the Harry Potter series, which went on to sell over 400 million books, she was a single mother on welfare who was contemplating suicide and had been rejected by 12 publishing houses in the UK. I'm so pleased to be joined by our two very special guests tonight, Ray Zahab and Marcel Belfoy, who are going to be sharing their personal experiences with you about how you can overcome the roadblocks in your life that are holding you back from meeting your goals. But first, we have a caller. Are you on the line, caller?
Yes, I'm Lisa. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for calling in. What was your question for our guests?
I was wondering, what type of daily habits do you both have you implemented in your lives in order to accomplish the big goals that you have and the right mindsets? Do you have a daily routine in the morning and the evening that helps to contribute to your success? If so, what is it?
Let's start with you, Marcel.
Well, first and foremost, that's a great question because I was going to talk about habits later. And I think that the most key component to any high performance athlete or person or somebody striving to success to me is to have a keystone habit, one core habit. It is so hard to grab onto a number of different things. And whatever that habit is for each person should domino into other effects. So for me, I set my mind right every morning. I have some quiet time where I get up in the morning and I have my coffee and I set my intention for the day. I just have a little quiet time with myself. I have a little self-talk. I look at what I want to accomplish and where I am, and I reflect. That, to me, gets my mind right and gets me started off for the day. That's my daily habit. And then my overall habit that is more of my domino effect is resiliency and perseverance. So every day, every activity that I do, I remind myself that I'm persevering and I'm being resilient throughout the day and throughout the week and month and year, etc.
So it's very, very mindful and very focused on a daily basis.
It is. I think it's really important to have that time alone, that quiet time to be able to set your intentions and your focus and set your day off on a good start.
And what about you, Ray?
Yeah, you know what? Marcel and I are not that far off. I'll wake up in the morning, and before I put my feet on the floor, I think about what my next project is. And when I've set up a goal, an expedition, whatever it is, a year out, I begin to live that goal. So every day I start out thinking, what can I do today that's going to get me closer to that goal? It doesn't have to be something huge. It can be what my workout is going to be that day or what sort of planning and logistics I'm going to do that day. But I'm going to do one thing, even if it's a phone call, that gets me closer to that goal, perhaps a year or two down the road. But I also end my day, every single day, right before I fall asleep. I've learned this one from my wife, Kathy. I think of 3 things that have happened during the day that I'm grateful for and thankful for that made the day a great day. And I find that it's kind of like cleans the chalkboard, and then I go to sleep and I wake up the next day and I start over again.
So what are some of the things that you're grateful for, and is it hard sometimes to come up?
It can be anything. No, it is. It's a great point. Sometimes you're laying there, geez, I can only come up with 2 things, so I got to make a third one up. So, they can be the most mundane things. Like, thank God I woke up this morning and my toothbrush was dry. It wasn't wet. I put it in the drawer. It was really, but it could be something amazing, like something simple as pumping gas, and the person pumping gas beside me smiles, and I smile back at that person. I'm grateful for that moment. Or I have an incredible workout, or one of my kids had a great day and they're in a great mood. It's those things that make the fabric of life work better.
And there's some scientific evidence behind practicing a mindset of gratitude, isn't there? Like, it kind of reprograms you.
I suppose. I know it works for me.
Yeah, Marcel, I see you nodding your head.
Absolutely. You have to feel good about your accomplishments. You have to have small victories. Anytime you feel grateful for something, you're in a mindset of accomplishment automatically, regardless of what that is. There's just a positive euphoria that comes across your being, and it's very, very important, especially like Ray says, before you go to bed at night, so that you're in the right mindset when you go to sleep, not just when you get up.
What are you grateful for?
Well, I'm grateful for opportunity. I'm in a country and a place where I've had opportunity to live my goals and live my dreams. And regardless of what socioeconomic background you come from, and I came from one where a lot of people don't have that opportunity or that chance, but Canada gave me that opportunity to strive for my goals and to become a professional head football coach. And I had that only because I live here, and not everywhere is that possible.
We have another caller on the line. Debbie, are you with us?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for calling in. Did you have a question?
I do. As somebody in my early 50s with facing a lot of kind of struggles in my life, how do you decide kind of what to tackle when it seems insurmountable, when there's so many big things that you need to change? Where do you decide to start, or how do you kind of make that decision?
Seems like a good question for you, Ray.
Well, it starts with one step. I find what we do as human beings is we overcomplicate things. We create or identify 5,000 things that we need to fix at once. And the reality is we can't do that. We can't change everything at once. Maybe you get lucky now and then and you can't. But for the most part, every journey starts with a step, as the saying goes. And so what I suggest to people, and I've had friends that have approached me with the exact same question, is find one thing that you can do that you know you can get that foot on the ground and you can accomplish and you can achieve, and that begets another. It's almost like a snowball effect. So you have these, small victories. I think you may have mentioned that before. You have these small victories that grow into much larger scale changes over the long haul. Rome wasn't built in a day. You do one small step at a time, and over the long period, you look back and you're like, wow, I can't believe where I am a year from now. It's incremental, but it's huge. Anything to add to that, Marcel?
Well, Ray makes a great point. And if you want to put more definition on it, identify what that one key thing is that you are, or that speaks to you. So for me, that one keystone habit I have that I could start that one step with is, I've developed a resiliency from my past and a perseverance. And what is that to you? If I asked you, Barbara, what would that be for you? What would be that one thing, that one adjective that speaks to you for yourself?
For myself, certainly resilient is one of the adjectives I would use to describe myself in my journey.
Yeah, and you, Ray?
You know what? The same thing. I think resiliency is something that, and to use, some of the stuff that you're talking about with your book and with the effective leadership is, and I coined this term, that it's 90% mental, the other 10%'s all in our heads, the challenges that we face. And over time, it's a mental game. And over time, resiliency is something that we learn, but it's like a skill. We get better at it. The more resilient we become, the more adversity we can face and the more that we can overcome. And so I think resiliency is key in everything that we do.
So for our caller, that would be the first step. It would be, identify what that one thing you have, like Ray said, what's that one adjective that describes you and what you can do, and start with that step and use that as your backdrop.
Thank you so much for calling in, Debbie. Now, Marcel, I want to get into a little bit more about some of your career highlights. You've sent us some photos of some of your career highlights. We can just pull those up in a minute here. You've had a long career as a football coach. Tell me a little bit about some of the things that sort of stand out for you. We've got a photo up here.
Well, that's me as the head coach of the Hamilton Tiger Cats in 2009. That's before our home playoff game. I had the opportunity to take over a team that had been 3-15 3 years in a row and hadn't had a home playoff game in 7 years, and that's pre-game. And right now there's some jets going over top, and I just had one of those mountaintop experiences for a football coach where you've arrived, you're at the top level of your profession in the country, you're in a leadership role, and I can remember thinking at that time, life is great. It's nice to be here and experience this with all these fans and with this group of men I was coaching.
And you've also sent us a second picture. What's happening here?
Well, so I had the opportunity to be the head coach of the University of Ottawa Gee-Gees. We won the Vanier Cup in 2000, and shortly after we won the Vanier Cup, the Sens had us pre-game to bring out the cup, and those are our captains and the Sens captains, and again, leading some young men, and that's a really interesting story from a leadership or a keystone habit perspective. And this is our ring from 2000, but on the inside of every ring, there's it still fits from 2000. I think I can get it off. Yeah. Must be the lights. Inscribed on the inside of every ring, it was our key habit that we talked about. It's Kaizen. And Kaizen is a Japanese multinational word for continuous, never-ending improvement. And that's how we based our team that year, was on Kaizen. So we didn't speak to penalties. We didn't speak to effort. We didn't coach effort. We didn't coach mindset. We just said Kaizen, Kaizen, Kaizen. And that just meant, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I continuously and never-ending improvement? And
because sometimes we veer off the path without even realizing it.
That's right, and things have to be organic. Ray made the point. You can't think about 20, 30 things. Even at 20 years old, you can't bring that all together. So you have to focus on one thing, and that was your keystone. So for us, I can remember going through McDonald's one time, and the kid got my order wrong, and I'm in Kaizen, Kaizen. He's like, who is this crazy guy? I'm like, oh, sorry. I'm like, I'm still in football mode. And I drove away. I felt horrible. But that's how ingrained and internalized it became.
I would have liked to have been there. Now, you brought us some props here. You've got some rope and a balloon. What's that all about?
Okay, so Ray, you're going to appreciate this because you've probably seen this. So, I don't know if I have. So the rope, I saw this very young, or I read this story, I should say very young. And so in Asia, they train elephants as babies. They put this rope around their leg. And they use, so they put it around their leg, and that's how they train the elephants. Well, the elephants are full grown. They still have a rope around their leg. As we all know, this will not hold an elephant. But I remember reading the story and thinking, that's how we can be, as children, conditioned to not be able to grow, not be able to become everything we can be, and just feel over years and years and years that we're not able to escape, we're not able to do anything.
So what you're saying is that the fully grown elephant has the same rope around its leg that it did as a baby elephant, and it could just take off any moment it wanted to, but it doesn't know its own power.
That's correct, and the handlers just take them by a rope. And I think, and when I say that, I think it's just amazing. I mean, it just speaks to us, and for me, it spoke to mindset again, being a young person and having that open mindset. But my parents never limiting what we could think about, or squashing any of our dreams. We could just speak it, and not necessarily speak it into existence, but it was captured. And so when I saw this, I was just like, this is amazing to show a big, powerful beast like that can be held by a mindset and not an actual chain.
That's amazing.
We've only got 1 minute left before we go to break. Do we have time to talk about the balloon?
We do, real quickly. So we talk about personal growth and getting better and teams. And people get in this mindset, and this wrong mindset of that they have to do something. What else can I do to get better? What else can I make this situation better? What else can I do to improve my situation? And what we have to do is focus on bettering ourselves and our personal growth. So when we talk about in teams, I am the blue balloon. The team or society or your family unit is the outside balloon. To make the team go well, if I blow up me, what happens to the team?
Amazing. When we come back from the break, I want to hear more about that and about, of course, your observations and some of your favorite expeditions and some of the props that you've brought to show us today. So don't go away. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. We're in the studio tonight talking with very special guests, Ray Zahab and Marcel Bellefeuille, on how to overcome life's obstacles. Now, first, we have a caller on the line. Julia, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for calling in. Did you have a question for our guests?
Yes. So, did you guys ever fail after trying to change a bad habit? And if so, how did you motivate yourself to try again?
Ray?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I say that the most difficult things that we do in our lives are relative to us as individuals as well. What you do that's difficult, you can't compare yourself to the next person. It took me 3 years to quit smoking, not because I was addicted to cigarettes, but because I was passionate about smoking. Like, I couldn't picture, not having a cup of coffee and a cigarette together. I mean, I loved the whole thing.
Ritual.
So, but it was also symbolic of everything that was unhealthy in my life. And I tried for 3 years. I've had people come up to me and say, big deal, I quit smoking in a day. It was the most difficult thing I've ever done. Forget 14,000 kilometers of running. Quitting smoking was so hard. And every time I would think that I was quit, every time I thought that, all right, I got this thing licked, something would happen and I would get pulled back into it, and it was sort of the entry point to everything else that was negative, all the other substances and everything else that I was doing. So
it's like a slippery slope.
It is. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And so when I finally decided, and this is the resolution point, when I finally decided that I needed to make this decision for me, and that's what it comes down to, is you have setback after setback after setback, and then you come to a point where you're like, okay, I'm either going to do this or I'm not. That's what it comes down to. It really comes down to it's going to happen or it's not going to happen. And I gave myself a date. New Year's Eve 1999 was what it was for me, because if you recall, we all thought the world was going to end. Do you remember that on January 5th? So I gave myself New Year's Eve 1999. That was going to be the day, and I would wake up the next day and absolutely be a non-smoker, and that would change my life. So I did. I woke up that next day. Of course, I wanted a cigarette desperately first thing in the morning when I woke up with my coffee and hungover because it was New Year's Eve the night before. But I didn't take it. What I did was I took the pack of cigarettes that I had, taken from over these last 3 years. It was 3 years before when I promised myself I was going to quit, right? And finally, 3 years later, I'm about to do it. I took the pack and I put it in my pocket so that I would tempt myself to want one every day until I knew that I had power over this thing. And it was amazing. When I resolved to do it, when I finally said, this is it, and I went 1 day, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, every day after that, I got stronger. And it led me to a point where I started doing extraordinary things based on a premise that 3 years ago, I decided to make a change. Finally followed through on it a few days before, and now I'm doing things in the outdoors with my brothers that I never thought possible. And it proved to me that we're all capable of exceptional and extraordinary in our lives if we decide enough with the setbacks, I'm going forward.
Are you still tempted to smoke?
No, not at all.
It's amazing. What about you, Marcel?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say to our caller is there are no failures, just feedback. That's something that I had to grasp onto early in my career, especially with all the media and social media and being in the public spotlight. And I realized, that used to bother me, and because you're used to always getting pats on the back and attaboys. But there's no failure, just feedback. So when I'm trying to change a habit, I know the process of a habit. There's a cue, there's a routine, then there's a reward, right? You wake up, you feel like you want to have a cigarette, right? And then the reward is you get this euphoria or these chemicals that release in your body. So when I realized for myself just changing habits, and I've had a lot of bad habits in my life that I was able to overcome over time, was I just realized that it's just feedback. So when I would fall off the wagon and I'd eat that, half a chocolate cake after dinner.
We've all been there.
I would just go back and say, okay, it's just feedback. Why did I do it? How was I feeling? What was I up to? What was my body? Was I tired? Did I have anything to do? So I would just go back to the routine and just see, why did I have that cue? What was the routine? What was the reward? And then I went back to, again, resiliency. Just stay at it, stay at it, stay at it. It may take 3 years, but if you stay at it and you're resilient, you will overcome it.
You know what else is amazing too, if I may, is that I have found, and Marcel, tell me if you've found this as well, and Barb, you as well, that going on this notion and this concept that really there are no failures, right? I mean, they're all learning opportunities, right? These setbacks end up being some of the best learning opportunities that we've ever had. Running for me taught me, because it's so simple, it's so straightforward. You're either running or you're not. You're getting to your point that you need to, your destination, or you're not getting there. And I had many times when things didn't turn out. I imploded, had to pull the chute, whatever, and I wasn't able to complete these runs or these journeys or these races that I was doing. And instead of looking at that situation and what made me drop out, give up, quit, whatever it was, or have a physical implosion, instead of looking at it as a failure, I'm like, okay, what the hell did I do wrong? And I'm never doing that again. It was the wrong piece of gear, or it was the wrong thing to do. And instead of dwelling on it, I apply that, and then it never happens again. Mm-hmm. So I said to myself, hey, dummy, apply this in your own life, right? Instead of banging my head against the wall, constantly repeating the same mistakes over and over again, I got to a point where I was like, hey, this isn't working in life, whatever it was the situation was, go in the other direction. And it was just a recipe that seemed to work. For me, it was something that I learned from running. So it sort of follows through with what you were saying.
The answers are always there. We just have to know where to look. But we have a caller on the line. Susan, are you with us?
I am.
Thank you so much for calling in. What was your question?
You both guests are talking about how important resilience is. How does one go about building resilience within oneself?
What do you think, Marcel?
Well, if you want to take a note at home, I have what I call the 3 Ps of resiliency. And the first P is perspective. And the most resilient people have a perspective that, and it's a healthy perspective, but there's 3 things in life. You're usually going into a trial, you're in a trial, or you're coming out of a trial. And people that are resilient have that perspective that there's going to be obstacles, setbacks, and they're going to be continual throughout your life. So once you get in that mindset, you're not as taken aback when things happen. You're not as upset. You find that you're actually more prepared for them mentally to happen. It's not negative thinking, it's just a certain reality, that perspective. The second P is purpose. Can you find a purpose within what happens in your life, and a greater purpose outside of yourself? And, you see these stories all the time where somebody takes something bad that happens. Maybe it's a cancer. They go through, they're resilient. You see, Terry Fox, and then they find a greater purpose where they raise money and create awareness. So, can you find a purpose? And sometimes it might be just in your neighborhood. It may not be, something that's national. And when you find purpose, it takes all the thoughts and the issues off of you. And then the third thing is perseverance, right? So, knowing that there's no expiry date. It's not a jug of milk. Life goes and goes until it stops. So you're always going to have these challenges. So most resilient people, they might be still dealing with the challenge, and then they just roll into the next challenge, and they start working on that one, and they don't even think about it. So it's this mindset of being able to wrap yourself around what I call the 3 Ps of resiliency.
That's amazing. Do you have anything to add to that?
You know what? Everything Marcel just said, bang on. I agree with all of those thoughts. I would also say that resiliency is something that in practice you actually become good at, and it's not something that you start to take for granted, but it becomes very natural. And you know, it's a big word, resiliency. We say resiliency, and it sounds like we're talking about being tough, or we're talking about a suit of armor.
To me, it's the ability to just pick yourself up and dust yourself off and keep going.
Exactly. And you know, in the most simplest of terms, you can do that every single day, and you're presented with opportunities every single day in the minutia of a day in order to build that. And it's this whole concept that I believe that small movements make big movements, small changes make big changes. And so that resiliency, before you know it, you sort of start to make decisions in your life that gear you more towards more of a resilient person, becoming a resilient person. You know?
That's amazing. Thank you so much for calling in. Now, before we went to break, we talked about an exercise that you have with a balloon. Let's talk a little bit about what that balloon signifies.
Well, it goes back to overcoming challenges, and a lot of the times when we're in a unit, whether it's a family unit or whether we're part of a team or an organization or a unit that's within a bigger business organization, and there are challenges. What happens a lot, and this happens in high performance sport and football, when your team struggles or when there's challenges or things to overcome, we always think about works. What can I do to get better? What else can I do? Can I take on another project? Can we do this other activity to help the family unit work better? And you're always in that mindset of taking on works. And what the balloon shows you is really you should focus on yourself. So you're inside that unit, and if you improve yourself and if you focus on yourself, essentially the team will get bigger around you. And then eventually you become like caffeine and water, and the color changes and it just blends. And that's what the balloon exercise is. It's just a visual on if you inflate yourself and improve yourself, the link in the chain gets stronger, that the whole thing gets better. And that's how you actually improve a team.
Very interesting example of the parallels between your experiences on the field and in the boardroom, and I want to hear more about that. But first we have a caller. Emily, are you with us?
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for calling in. What was your question?
So my question is I always thought I was chasing like a career, full-time job to have, good pay, benefits. And that to me was my obstacle for a long time. And then I finally got one not too long ago, and I kind of feel like I'm back at square one now, where I still have that feeling of this is not it for me. And I'm kind of looking for, I guess my question is more asking for a bit of advice, is how do I find what it is I'm looking for? Because I thought it was a career, like a stable career, but I don't think that that's it. And I kind of feel unhappy and a little bit lost.
Ray, you've been there yourself.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the Holy Grail question, right? That is the Holy Grail. I mean, everybody wants to know, and it's such a great question. And I would say to the caller, a lot of times the answers are already within us. That a lot of the things that we're searching for, we already ironically have those answers in us. It's finding those passions in life that aren't necessarily what we think they are initially, but then they become something else and you get taken down a different path. So I would suggest that you find, it doesn't have to be in the workplace, but it's finding that one element in life that you derive happiness from and passion from, and you put energy into that. And I believe that when you put energy into these things that you're truly passionate about, it's a law of attraction. Things begin to happen, a form around that, and you draw yourself into a direction in life that you can't even predict now at this point. So to the caller, I would say, for sure, define or think about what are the things that you love to do? What makes you happy?
What makes you tick?
What makes, and start to go down that path with those things and see where that takes you, and one step leads to another.
Thank you so much for calling in, Emily. Did you have anything really quickly to add to that? We just have 20 seconds left. No pressure.
No, I agree wholeheartedly with Ray. And, find that purpose. It's tough to find the purpose-driven life, but it's somewhere in the answer of what you love to do. I completely agree with Ray.
Absolutely, and I agree with you both as well. When we come back from the break, I want to hear more about your adventures. We'll pull up some of the photos that you shared with us, Ray, and of course we'll get to some of these interesting props. So more on that when we come back from the break. to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour, and we're talking about how to deal with life's obstacles in a way that allows you to pursue your goals. We have a caller on the line. Are you there, caller?
Oh, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for calling in. Did you have a question for us?
I did. So my question wasn't for either one of you gentlemen in particular, but it was sort of about, once you get into that mindset or overcome these challenges in life and you're sort of on the more positive end of things, what would be like your number one tip to sort of, get rid of the people who have been surrounding you for your life, who you realize are no longer positive influences that maybe had been holding you back from achieving this?
That's a great question. I actually wanted to bring this up about toxic relationships and who your support team is. Let's start with you, Marcel. What are your thoughts on that? How do you know when it's time to sort of, cut the ties to people who aren't serving their purpose in your life?
It's a great question, and you go through that, especially as you evolve and change and you grow in your career and grow in your life. And I'd say the first thing is, I make conscious decisions on who I'm going to love from afar, as I say, and that means, that I'm not going to spend time with them. I'm going to spend time in other circles with other people of like mind, of other people that can share same influences and help me grow. So I just, I break off contact. I'm kind about it, but I do just do it from afar. And I think it's so critically important. You are the average of the 5 people that you hang with in every area of your life, of the 5 closest people to you. So just remember that that's important. And if you have a toxic part of you, you have to trim that tree. You got to cut the branches off, or the tree won't grow to its fullest.
Ray, you had sort of a hard partying lifestyle before you decided to turn a new leaf. Did you have to let go of some of those people?
That wasn't as significantly difficult in my earlier years when I first made that change, because I just sort of gravitated towards the people that were doing the things I was doing, so it was a transition of lifestyle. But in 2017, I was on expedition up in the Arctic, middle of winter, and I was scouting a frozen river with my teammate. We were up in a river gorge, and we were up current, very steep. And I had one last patch of ice to check so that we could continue on across this mountain valley. We had been dropped by helicopter. Chances of rescue were pretty much 0.
Wow.
And so I got on this ice and I was testing this ice and it immediately broke through. And the current in the river that was obviously cascading downhill was so strong it was pulling me underneath the ice. Thought for sure I wasn't going to get out of that hole. And the first thing that came into my mind was, I'm never going to see my wife and my kids again. And the second thing that came into my mind, it was a shock. It was in disbelief that I was in this hole. How did this happen? I have all this experience. How could I have made this mistake? What happened? But I knew I had to get out. I had 2 minutes, or I was going to die simply and slip underneath this water. Long story short, because I know I'm so sorry for this long story. So long story short, I end up getting myself out of this hole to a point where my teammate, because the ice was all collapsing, was able to reach to me. I had my foot on the side of the hole with these crampons pushed out, and he was able to grab the top of my pack. I rolled out into the snow, covered myself in snow to get as much moisture off as I could. It's 40 below. My boots are filled with water, obviously. I was completely soaked, and I was laughing because I could not believe that I was still alive. And I had the emergency gear in my sled because we were unsupported. We were pulling all of our gear. I had a down suit to save myself with, which Canada Goose had made for me. So I knew I was going to be all right. I was going to live. But probably my feet were going to be frostbitten and I was going to lose my feet. But I didn't care. You know why? Because I was going to see my family again and the people that I loved. And there was this epiphany that I had. It was the most difficult thing I'd ever, one of the greatest challenges I've faced in my adventure career, but at the same time, it was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my entire life, because I went home after discussing this with my teammate and I said to myself, you know what? I have another shot at this. And I immediately let go, not in a judgy way, but I let go of all those relationships that were around me that were no longer reciprocal friendships or true reciprocal friendships. People reaching out to me that perhaps were just reaching out to me for something. Not friendships where I'm calling them all the time, how's your family doing? You know what I mean? But you're not getting that call back.
Yes.
And it wasn't like I was investing time in these people when I could be investing more time with my family and with the people that I truly cared about. So sorry for a long story. But the point of it was, that moment really drove home to me. It took that long to drive home to me how important it is to surround yourself with people that truly are of like mind, as you said, that you care about, and then reciprocate. Reciprocation in a relationship is key.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Now, you sent us some photos of some of your favorite expeditions. Maybe we could pull those up now. You've been all over the world. Is it 70 countries?
I think so.
Yeah.
At the Alaska.
So,
This is my favorite place on earth.
Where's this?
In Baffin Island in the Canadian Arctic in the middle of February. I've been across this region of Baffin 8 times, seven times.
Okay.
And in various capacities in various seasons, but I especially love the winter in the Arctic.
Wonderful.
That's that one. This is also Baffin Island, Canadian Arctic, unsupported. So that was that sled that I said, that's the kind of gear that I would have on an unsupported winter expedition.
Yeah. And what are you doing here?
This is, I ran from South Africa to Angola, 1,850 kilometers across the Namib Desert in summer. And this was in an area called Sossusvlei, and that's also in the same area of Namibia.
How hot was that?
55 degrees Celsius.
Oh boy.
Yeah, pretty hot. Pretty hot. This is the world's largest, most voluminous lake. You could take all 3 Great Lakes and fit it into this one. This is Lake Baikal in Siberia.
Okay.
And it's also got the clearest ice on the planet. This is February 2010. And myself and another fella, Kevin Vallely, we ran the length of the lake unsupported, meaning again, everything we need was in those sleds, so about 700 kilometers.
And it was probably minus 55.
Minus 50.
Wow.
This is in the Atacama Desert, the driest place on earth, in Chile, in the middle of summer, 2017, scouting for a client expedition. I'm taking a group of clients there in a few weeks, and this is where my clients will be in this photo.
Mm-hmm.
This is Namibia as well, on that same desert. So desert landscapes change dramatically. They go from sand to rocks to, Antarctica's a desert, you know.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is Namibia again in the dunes. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So I've been in tons of sand dunes. I'm in the Sahara Desert. I crossed sand dunes across Niger and Libya for 3 weeks.
Wow.
So
amazing.
This is the Canadian Arctic, Baffin Island. You've got Asgard, Thor, Loki, all the mountains of Baffin Island there in the distance, and there's me and a couple buddies of mine on a trip we did together. That's just me pretending that I'm cool in the Atacama Desert, trying to wake up. Where's my coffee?
Okay, and do we have one more picture after that? Okay, I think that's the last picture. Perfect. Right. Let's go over some of the props that you brought us to show.
Marcel's been fascinated with the monkey, so I'm going to tell a story about the monkeys. This is Mr. Monkey.
Okay.
Mr. Monkey found his way into my duffel bag by my daughters on one of my expeditions that I was headed out on because they were afraid that I was going to be alone. And so I can't remember where I was going. It might have been Siberia. And so I was going through my duffel bag when I got there, cleaning out my gear, and I'm like, what the heck is this monkey doing here? And so they sent him along to keep me company. And now Mr. Monkey has been on so many expeditions around this world, maybe a dozen expeditions. And what Mr. Monkey's job is now, he works with our photographer, John Gold, a National Geographic photographer. And Mr. Monkey gets photos in all the places that I go, and he tells the stories of the places that I'm in for elementary schools that are following along through live websites that track my expeditions. So he's a conduit into the younger people that are following the expeditions and gives context through his eyes.
That's
of
great.
what I'm experiencing.
It's very whimsical. And this is a shoe that was custom made?
So, and I think this is something that you would agree, necessity is the mother of invention, right? Of invention, sorry. And so we come up with strategies in life and we come up with tools in life to help us get the job done. And it's not always bought off the shelf or something that you can just, take off the shelf and it applies to you and it works for you. You've got to customize. Like a lot of the strategies in your book, I guarantee are about customization in one's life. So what I did is I work with various companies like Canada Goose or whoever to bring together the gear I need to be able to achieve the goals that I have. So this is a shoe that Skechers made for me, and I need a lightweight shoe. They put zebra stripes on it because of all the zebras I told them that I saw in Namibia. But it's an ultra lightweight shoe with grippers on the bottom, and it's sort of an amalgamation of many types of shoes put together for me for an upcoming expedition that I'm doing in South America. So they built this shoe, and then finally. This is because I didn't know for show and tell. There wasn't any specific. It was like bring anything.
Yes.
And this is my tracker. And what this does is it enables classrooms, thousands of students who follow me and people who follow me through social media on my expeditions to track me every day, every step in real time when I'm on expedition. So this is the thing that connects me to the outside world.
That's super
Isn't that amazing?
cool. It's
it goes
really
everywhere.
amazing. Yeah, gotta love technology. We have a caller on the line really quickly. Julie, are you with us?
I am.
Thank you so much for calling. Did you have a quick question for our guests?
I do. So, at the end of the day, what would be like the one thing that you would take from this life that you've had like no regrets? It was the best thing you've ever done.
Okay, really quickly, because we're almost at the end of our show. What do you think, Marcel?
I've chased my dreams, and I continue to do so. Whether we make it to exactly where we want to be, to the ultimate mountaintop experience, I've chased them. I'm taking my shot.
Yeah, the greatest thing for me, for sure, has been being a dad, something I always wanted to be. So for sure, I mean, I know that sounds corny, but that's legit the answer. But I would say this, the one thing that I've learned, I spent 30 years of my life talking myself out of taking chances and taking risks, the first 30 years of my life, doing so for fear of failure, predicting failure, things were gonna go wrong, and what other people would think of me when those things went wrong. Now, I don't give a damn. I take chances, I take risks that are calculated, but I do things based on decisions that I am making for me. I own the decisions I make. I do the best I can, but I take a chance because you got, like I said in one of those videos, one kick at the can, one chance to do something with your life. How long are we here? 75 years or something on average?
I'm only going to 100.
Yeah. I'll be lucky if I make it to 75. Do something.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to, right?
Thank you so much for calling in, Julie. Now we're almost at the end of our show. Marcel, what are you up to these days and where can we find you?
Well, you can find me at coachmb.com. So I do a multitude of things, all in the pursuit of helping others. But besides being a father of 4 and a husband and a happily married one, enjoying my family, I do teach Algonquin in 1 semester a year, a leadership course. I do some corporate work. I do public speaking and keynote speaking, which is great. And I do football. I'm scouting right now with the Edmonton Eskimos, and I continue to do some coaching in the off season in the U.S. So that's pretty much me, but I get to do all the fun things and working with people and helping people hopefully, reach and achieve their dreams.
And where can we find your book?
You can find my book on Amazon, and you can find it at Barnes & Nobles, either or online. You can buy them you can buy it online, and please go out and read it. I think there's something in there for everybody.
Thank you so much. And we're almost at the end of our time together. Ray, but tell us really quickly about Impossible to Possible.
Impossible to Possible is an organization that I founded with my wife Kathy and my best friend Bob in 2008. And essentially what we do is take young people between the ages of 16 and 21 on expeditions that are modeled after my expeditions. They're learning based, they're connected to classrooms, and they're in the most remote parts of the world, the Amazon jungle, Tunisia, Rajasthan, we've been all over. And the expeditions are 100% free. Students apply when we announce the expedition, and then they're selected.
Fantastic. I want to thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in and for sharing your wisdom and your experience. It's been a great journey just listening to your stories.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week with more. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great night.